Hello, fellow fans of Christopher Manson's Maze. In the previous clip, I talked about what I think are the nature of the clues that the author intended in the book, and some of the ways I think we can distinguish them from those rationalizations we're just making up to justify the answers after the fact. I said that one way to illustrate some of these points is to look at room one. So, in this clip, that's what we're going to do. So, here are what I believe to be the intended clues to solve room number one. And this is what I figured out years ago, and it seems some other readers independently came up with the same solution. By the way, in this clip, and you might have noticed in some of the other previous clips, I use color illustrations. And if you're wondering where these are from the 1990s CD-ROM game that came out. They colorized each of the rooms. So I'm going to use those. Okay, so we're told on the back of the book that, hey, in room number one, somebody in the dialogue says the word story. And we do see a door that has story written over it. So maybe that's the correct door. And when we go there, we see that the dialogue kind of follows along. We say the ringing, there was a ringing sound, and then the ringing stopped. Also in room one, if we look on the easel, there are some symbols on the paper, including sort of an arrow that points to door 20. So it seems all of these clues are kind of indicating room 20. Was this the wrong door to take? Well, yes and no. It is entirely possible from room 20 that we can choose other doors and find a path to room 45. So, in that sense, choosing door 20 from room 1 is not wrong per se. However, it turns out that this is not the door we need to take in order to find the shortest path from room to 41 to 45 and back. The room we should have chosen for that was room number 26. So let's go back to room number one and take a closer look here. If we take a look at the doors, we see from right to left, over here, all the way to 121, we have an apple. Then the next door, we have what looks like a bottle. 26, what looks like a cup. And in the fourth door, what looks like a drum with two drumsticks. I don't know what else that could be. We also see a kind of similar illustration in another room. Well, what might all of these mean? Well, they are words that begin with the letters A, B, C, and D. Apple, bottle, cup, drum. And just not in the order we expect. So perhaps the correct door has something to do with jumbled letters. If we look further in the dialogue, we see somebody else say, not just the story of my life, but somebody else says, nary a soul to be seen. Another person says, we don't want to be late. Now, notice the letters of nary can be rearranged to get yarn, and the letters of late can be rearranged to get tale, Tale. So you could say there are references here to the words story, tale, and yarn. Out of the four door words, the only one we haven't found a reference to is fable, and that is the correct door, the door to 26. That is the door that will put us on the path that is the shortest to room 45 and back. Again, doesn't necessarily mean 20 was completely wrong. We still have some hope of getting to 45 from there, but not as direct of a path as with 26. Now, the fable door is also the door with the cup, and I've seen some fans speculate that this might be a reference to when you're taking a test like the SATs, and some people say, when in doubt, choose C. I guess the psychology of that is if you have a bunch of random things, you choose the one in the middle. In the 1980s comedy movie Summer School, I remember one of the characters trying to fly through a multiple choice test, and he says out loud to himself as he checks off the answers, C, 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 C. Now, all of those things I just rattled off, are they necessarily clues that the author put in? Well, I suppose I can't be completely sure. I think the, when in doubt, choose C thing, maybe a little far fetched. But a lot of the rest seems to make sense to me. The other alleged clues don't require a whole lot of digging or connecting a long string of speculative facts together in a long way to arrive at the reasoning. They're examples of multiple ideas that indicate the same thing. One final thing about the objects in room one. We have, of course, all this paper on the floor and these symbols on them. What do the symbols mean? Well, on the wall on the left, we have what looks like the word like, although it's backwards. That I know for sure has something to do with a whole separate puzzle in Maze, which I'm not going to get into today. There is also down on the lower left what looks like the word high and what looks like number 17 in the corner. I'll talk more about that in a future clip when I talk about room 17. Otherwise, there are maybe a few letters like G and D, kind of looks like over on the left. But these other symbols seem unique. One wild guess that I have, and it's just a guess, is that this easel is a drawing board. And as you work on Maze more and more, you'll find yourself going back to room one, which literally here is back to the drawing board. Maybe these are attempted maps of different rooms. These are the little scribbles here, like this square with no things leading out of it. Maybe that's room 24, the room with no exits. I don't know. That's just some speculation. But let's look at other choices of exits from room one, though, because I think this helps reinforce some of the ideas and also gives more insight into what kind of clues the author, Christopher Manson, may have put into the book. So let's start with room 20. If we go from 1 to room 20, we see a strange amount of items beginning with the letter T. That's what I noticed here. So there's a turban in this picture, there's a telephone on a table, there's a tortoise, of course. There's a tower, 2 towers. Tower is a tarot card. Perhaps a newspaper on the ground is a tabloid. So there are a lot of things here beginning with the letter T. Now, my hunch here, my personal interpretation of this, which I don't think I've seen anybody mention on intotheabyss.net, but maybe somebody else has come up with this, is that this room is all a tease, as in Tease, tease. In fact, we know that this room, room 20, is actually the last room in the shortest path. It's a room you take on the way back from room 45 to finally get to room number 1. So the reference to the ringing having stopped is really just there to throw you off. We also see a tortoise here. Earlier along the shortest path, we saw a rabbit. So, as some have pointed out, this brings to mind the fable of the tortoise and hare. We're here at the finish line, and the tortoise is here. Slow and steady wins the race. And again, interestingly enough, the door we took at the beginning from room 1 was the door marked Fable. Now, yet another connection that I've read other people point out is that the tortoise and the hare is Aesop's fable number 226. And in Maze, you start by taking the door 2TO26. So go from room 1 to door 26, 226. Again, we know that Manson used puns in the riddle and in his other books too, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was intentional. Not necessarily a clue that he expects readers to find right away, but, maybe a nice afterthought thing. I also read somebody point out that the tower, going back at room 20, is tarot card number 16. And when you try to find the shortest path in 16 steps, this is the last room before you re-enter room 1. I also noticed that the edges of the carpet might kind of hard to see in this resolution, but if you have the book, you can see much better. The edges of the carpet look kind of like Greek letter omegas, if you look at them, and omega means the end. Now, again, these aren't the clues I personally figured out that led me to picking the correct door when I first went through the book. As I already said, I did a bunch of trial and error, and I'm trying to find out what clues the author may have intended. So, reverse engineering. Even then, I don't think the author intended people to know, for example, the actual numbers of Aesop's fables, like I said, but once again, seemed like something he may have thrown in anyway. But getting back to the room 20, maybe the chair and the leaning tower here is an indication of, yeah, you can take this door to room 5 to keep going down the path, but it's kind of slow and lazy way. It's not the quickest path. Because door 5 is the correct door you would take from here if you were going on your way to 45. Perhaps a tortoise has a double meaning for that. Like I said, the correct door depends on which direction you're going in. So, what about the other two choices from room number 1 that we haven't looked at yet? What about the yarn door, the one here on the far right, door 21? There's a slip of paper underneath the door, so I can see how that might get a reader's curiosity. Well, let's look at room 21. This room is actually a loop room. So if you chose this room from room number 1, then you've chosen wrong because now you're off the path. This means that you have to find your way from here back to room 1. It's your only hope of ever getting to 45. So the correct door in this case is 44 over here on the left. The one in the middle, room 24, we don't want that. That is the dead end. That's it's in the trap. That's the worst room, the room you want to avoid at all costs. And over on the right, 31 is another loop room where you'll have to get back to 44 anyway and find your way out. But instead of trying to figure out what the intended clue should be to pick 44, let's take a wider look at what's going on here. And this is something I've seen, I think, Maze Cast and Into the Abyss. Some people on there notice too. So over on the left, we see some serpents turning around on each other. We also see a bird with its back turned. And in the middle, we see a wrench. And a wrench is something you turn around. So one way to interpret all of this is that we're being given a message of turn back, turn away. In fact, there are 4 rooms total in all the book that lead here to 21. And in all of those cases, you should turn back when you step here because regardless of whatever room you were in previously, choosing room 21 is the wrong choice. Now, as for what the shape of the shrubs might mean, they mention in the dialogue, that the shrubs mean something. I've read guesses from people on intotheabyss.net, but I'm still kind of skeptical of those guesses. But also remember that the door to 21 was marked yarn. A yarn is a type of story, like all 4 of those were, but more specifically, it's a type of story that's usually long and elaborate. So, interestingly enough, this door, the yarn door, leads to one of the deepest parts of the loop, and you need a long number of steps to finally get out of it. All right, now what about the only door we haven't looked at yet from room number 1, the door marked tail? Well, this goes to 41. And I just have a few of the slides here. Now, what's the difference between a tale and a fable? This was the tale door. Well, both tales and fables are usually fictional stories, but a fable is usually one that involves animals and teaches some kind of lesson. Fables are usually short stories, whereas a tale can be longer. So, again, I think some kind of relation to the path and all that. Now, room 41 here is a very special room because it is the room where the path meets the loop. It's the only way to get out of the loop. So if you're in any of the loop rooms, regardless of what path room you took the wrong door to get there from, the only way to break out of the loop is to find your way here to room 41. Then exit the loop from here by taking the door to 1 over here on the left. Now, again, if you're in a trap room, there is no way you can find an exit to room 45 or to room 1. If you are in a path room, then you stick with exits only to other path rooms. If you're in a loop room, then your only hope is to find a way through the loop of rooms to room 41, and then from here, take the door to 1. Now, knowing that, are there any clues in this room? Well, we see this picture of the frog and the fly next to the chute to room 38. I talked about this before. Room 38 is one of the trap rooms, so it seems to me that this picture here is a clear clue to stay away. Now, what about the rest of the room? Well, some people have pointed out, if you look at the chute, the ladder, and the checkered board floor, and maybe the cartoonish drawing of a girl on the back right, it all kind of resembles the board game Chutes and Ladders. Now, Chutes and Ladders is based on an even older game called Snakes and Ladders, but I do think the Chutes and Ladders imagery here is intentional. The goal of Chutes and Ladders is to roll the die or spin the wheel and, get to square 100. Well, we know the chute is bad. So does it follow that the ladder is good? Well, no. If we take the ladder, we get to room 35, the basement room, with one exit, and we're stuck in a place further in the loop. Okay, we go there to 33. And yeah, we still got to find a whole series of rooms to try to get out of the loop. Okay, so let's get back to 41. What about the exit to 10? That's the only door we haven't talked about here. Well, again, this leads us deeper into the loop. I don't know what the 5 horns here in the doorway mean. I see that the straight one is on the inside of the room, and the loop and wavy ones are kind of on the inside. Maybe this is a warning about getting trapped further in the loop. Or the wavy one being like a snake from Snakes and Ladders, kind of wiggly like that. I don't know. I do know that if we take the ladder to 45, as I showed you, we're forced to go from there to 33. And from that room, we see another straight horn next to the correct door to pick. So door 3 is actually the correct one to take from there. And that does look a lot like that horn that's near door 10. Also, the big horn in the back looks like one that we see in one of the trap rooms, room 43. Oops. I guess I didn't put 43 in here. Whoops, sorry. But yeah, if you look at that in the book, you'll see there's like a giant horn like that. What any of this means with the horns and trumpets, I still don't know. Some Maze fans have speculated that that horn is really a bell. Yeah, it does look like a big bell, but in the CD-ROM game, um, in room 43, where you see the same big, horn shape, um, it it makes a horn sound when you click on it. So I think it's a horn, not a bell. Now, what that means in the trap room, I don't know. It seems like a big bullhorn in your face. Maybe it's saying the joke's on you. But anyway, let's get back here to room 41. As for the picture of the girl, I've heard it speculated that she's pointing to her eyes. Her eyes look like two circles, which imply two zeros. And if you're trying to win Chutes and Ladders and get to square 100, the one over the door to room 1 and the zeros of the eyes give you 100, 100. Therefore, take room 1. I don't know if I really buy that, though. It seems a little. It's another one of those things that seems like a bit of a stretch to me. I thought at first that she was pointing to her hair and that this must be a word clue, like here, hair, something rhyming with hair. Maybe, though, she's pointing to her eyes as if to say, you need to look at this room. Again, still not sure. One thing I read, though, is that the expression go back to square one actually has its origins in the game of Chutes and Ladders. So you do have to go back to square one. And maybe the easel in room 1, again, means back to the drawing board. I honestly don't think it's far-fetched to think that these are little witty references that, Manson put in. The one object, though, we have not talked about is this statue on the left. This is presumably what the text means when it talks about, quote, a special piece of furniture that I thought might appeal to my guests. Well, for one, it does sort of look like a board game piece. It's tall with a flat bottom, like a player's token piece. You would move along a board. Perhaps the head is a bullseye. Perhaps the arms crossed in an X means X marks a spot. Then again, X is Roman numeral 10, and 10 is the wrong door to take. For that matter, people have said this sort of resembles an Egyptian sarcophagus. On the one hand, we want to avoid death, but in this case, maybe it's more about starting anew. Because again, the correct door in here to take is 1 and get back. Other people have said the navel on the statue can represent birth and going back. I even saw one person speculate that the mushrooms below imply mushroom, the room of mush, meaning go and travel with a party like on a dog sled or travel fast. Again, kind of interesting, take, but don't know if it was an intended clue. Now, one other idea I did hear from somebody is that the outside mushroom on the lower left is on the statue's little toe, and that this is a reference to the 5 piggies, and the 5th pig, the little one that went wee 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 all the way home. So that is the best explanation I've heard for that. Otherwise, I don't know. But those are all my thoughts on room 41 and its clues, and talking about some of the doors out of room 1 and the wrong ones to pick. In any case, that finishes my thoughts about room 1, the exits that leave, from room 1, and the sorts of clues I suspect the author may have intended. So hopefully this will help us get a little more insight into trying to understand some of the other clues that are in the maze. And in my next clip, I'm going to talk about some other clues that I'm almost absolutely sure of. So some of the rooms where I think like, okay, I'm 99% certain I think I found what the clue was in this. And again, hoping to use that to try to understand more about maze and the clues. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.